Welcome. Today we're going to take a really close look at a figure whose entire persona was, well, it was an act of creation. Marie Magdalene Marlene Dietrich.
Her life really was a lesson in radical self-invention.
Absolutely. And her career spans, what, 7 tumultuous decades?
Hmm.
You're talking about moving from the stages of the Weimar Republic.
All the way to the Hollywood spotlight, then across the front lines of World War II, and finally, this whole other life on the global cabaret circuit.
It's a staggering story.
Yeah.
And we've got this really substantial body of source material to work with, covering her origins, her artistic peak, her fierce political stands, and a very, very complex personal life.
So our mission today is really an exploration. We want to distill the most essential and sometimes the most contradictory facts about one of the 20th century's true icons. We really want you, the listener, to walk away with a genuine sense of the sheer scale of the legend she built.
And the theme that just keeps coming up in all the sources is transformation, or maybe more accurately, control.
Absolute control. Dietrich was the master architect of her own image.
She starts as Marie Magdalene, a German stage actress, and she ends as Marlene, a revered American patriot. And this mysterious gender-bending femme fatale, every single shift was either meticulously calculated or, driven by these huge geopolitical forces that she chose to confront head-on.
And that's the essential thing to grasp. The final global icon we remember was an entirely different creature from the girl born in Berlin. The sources show, time and again, how she leveraged every success and, just as importantly, every failure to mold that legend into exactly what she needed it to be.
So let's go back to the very beginning. Schöneberg, 1901.
A pretty prosperous part of Berlin.
Right. She was born Marie Magdalene Dietrich. And her family background, it was respectably bourgeois.
Her mother, Wilhelmina Elisabeth Josephine, her family was quite affluent. They were in the jewelry and clockmaking trade.
Which suggests a certain amount of financial and social stability, at least at first.
But that stability was, well, it was shattered pretty quickly by the times. Her father, Louis Erich Otto Dietrich, was a police lieutenant. And the sources say he died fairly early on, around 1908. Marlene would have been about 7. So that loss was immediately followed by a lot of upheaval.
And that change really solidifies in the family structure. Her mother remarries Louis's best friend, Edward von Losch, in 1914.
Just as the Great War is kicking off, he was an aristocratic first lieutenant in the Grenadiers.
But von Losch died in 1916 from injuries he sustained in the war. And he never officially adopted the Dietrich daughters, which is an interesting detail because some biographies later tried to attach the von Losch name to her.
It's not accurate. And it's so interesting that her first real act of self-invention was so simple, so personal, the name Marlene.
It wasn't given to her by some Hollywood publicist.
No, she did it herself. Around age 11, she just combined her first 2 names, Marie Magdalene.
Her family already had nicknames for her, Lena, Leni. So this was just a very personal way for her to define herself.
It's an act of early branding, completely independent of the powerful men who would later try to claim they discovered her.
But before that legend could take hold, her first career path was completely derailed.
She was a serious musician. She studied the violin. She was dedicated to it. Her dream was to be a concert violinist.
A very different life, but a wrist injury. The sources aren't totally clear on the specifics, but it forced her to abandon that dream completely.
And that's a critical moment. It closes off this path of, classical discipline and pushes her towards the more bohemian world of the theater.
And the sources have this incredible little anecdote about her first professional job. After the injury in 1922, she gets a job playing violin in a pit orchestra for silent films.
In a small Berlin cinema. A humble start.
And what happened with that job is it's perfect, really, for the icon she would become. She lasted only 4 weeks before she was fired.
Just summarily fired. Apparently for poor playing, it's almost impossible to picture the future symbol of precision and poise getting canned from a job like that.
That failure really propelled her into the theater world. She tried to get into Max Reinhardt's famous drama academy.
But she didn't get in. Still, she was determined. She started as a chorus girl and then slowly worked her way up into small, legitimate roles in dramas staged by Reinhardt.
And this was a vital period for her. She got a real grounding in serious theater, appearing in Shakespeare, A Midsummer Night's Dream, and in plays by George Bernard Shaw.
Her first small film role came in 1923, The Little Napoleon.
Which was also a huge year for her personally. She married Rudolf Sieber, an assistant director she'd met on another film set, and their only child, Maria Elizabeth Sieber, was born the next year, 1924.
That marriage to Sieber is Well, it's one of the most stable and yet completely unconventional relationships in Hollywood history.
They stayed married until he died in 1976, 53 years.
All while she was having these numerous, very public, very acknowledged affairs with both men and women.
And this is where that theme of control really comes into focus. The sources say that Sieber wasn't just aware of these affairs. Their arrangement was almost collaborative.
She would apparently pass letters from her lovers onto him, sometimes with her own critical notes attached.
Wait, let's unpack that. So it's not just an open marriage. She's actively using her husband as a confidant, a sounding board for her romantic life.
It speaks to a profound level of trust, maybe, or at least emotional security. For Dietrich, Sieber was the anchor.
The one person providing that stability, that grounding of a family unit, which she clearly valued, even if it wasn't a conventional romantic partnership.
And the sources suggest she gained immense freedom from that non-traditional stability. It allowed her to pursue her art, her desires, knowing that the core of her life was intact.
And that psychological foundation was absolutely necessary for what came next, the partnership with Josef von Sternberg.
This is foundational to her career and to cinema history. Her big breakthrough came when he cast her as Lola Lola, the cabaret singer in The Blue Angel in 1930.
That film made her an instant global star, and it gave her the song that would define her career, Falling in Love Again.
Sternberg immediately took full credit for discovering her, which, given all her prior theater work, was a bit of an exaggeration.
A typical piece of directorial hyperbole, you could say. But it stuck.
And the momentum was incredible. Based on the success of The Blue Angel, Paramount Pictures signed her and brought her to the U.S.
Their strategy was pretty straightforward. They wanted to market her as the German rival to MGM's biggest star, the Swedish actress, Greta Garbo.
A manufactured rivalry, maybe, but it created immediate drama in the marketplace.
And Sternberg, he played his part perfectly. He welcomed her to Hollywood with his very public, very lavish gift, a green Rolls-Royce Phantom II.
A huge symbol of her new status. And then, as a fantastic little detail, the car actually appears in their first American film, Morocco.
But the car was the least of it. He began a complete transformation of her image. He coached her intensively. He incurred significant weight loss to get that specific, glamorous look.
He was focused entirely on creating the glamorous and mysterious femme fatale. And she, for her part, just completely submitted to his vision, which is a sharp contrast to other stars who really clashed with his demanding style.
This transformation was achieved really through his visual mastery. He didn't just film her, he sculpted her with light.
We have to talk about the mechanics here. He pioneered what's now famously known as butterfly lighting.
Right. A high direct light source in front of the subject.
And it creates this little butterfly-shaped shadow right under the nose. It highlights the cheekbones, softens the skin. It gave her face an almost ethereal, sculpted quality on screen.
And it wasn't just direct lighting. He used tricks. Light filtered through veils or those harsh graphic shadows from slatted window blinds.
He turned scenes into these stylized masterpieces. She became a canvas for expressionist light.
The sources really emphasized the sheer volume of their work together.
Yeah.
7 films, The Blue Angel, and then 6 straight Hollywood features.
That kind of intense, sustained artistic partnership between an actress and a director, all to refine a single persona, it's just unparalleled in film history. It points to a connection of staggering intensity.
Yeah. And that artistic intensity paid off immediately. It led to her period of Hollywood acclaim and set a standard for visual style that, it still influences fashion and film today.
The first one to point to is Morocco from 1930. It got her one and only Academy Award nomination for Best Actress.
And that film is still revolutionary for its gender-bending defiance. The scene where she's in a man's tuxedo.
She kisses a woman in the audience. In 1930, that was just an explosive act of artistic provocation.
She followed that with Shanghai Express in 1932, a huge commercial success. It grossed $1.5 million worldwide, which was massive for the era.
And the visual style of that film, Sternberg's mastery of light and shadow, it just permeated global culture. There's a production still from Shanghai Express.
The one that inspired the Queen album cover.
Exactly, the cover of Queen II. It just shows the deep, lasting influence of their visual language.
But that commercial success, it wasn't consistent. Their partnership started to strain at the box office with their last 2 films.
The Scarlet Empress in 1934 and The Devil is a Woman in 1935. Critically admired, but they were their lowest-grossing films together.
It's interesting. Dietrich herself often said that The Devil is a Woman was the film where she looked her absolute most beautiful.
But studios only care about the bottom line. Paramount reacted to the low profits by firing von Sternberg. And that effectively ended their incredible run.
And historians mostly agree that neither of them ever consistently reached those same artistic heights again. It just shows how essential their unique connection really was.
So this sent her into a period of searching. She took on films that demanded huge salaries, like the $450,000 she got for Night Without Armor in 1937. It made her one of the highest-paid actresses in the world.
But these were expensive films to make, and the box office returns just weren't there, especially in the American market, and her public popularity began to drop sharply.
She became associated with these expensive, foreign-feeling extravaganzas that American audiences just didn't connect with.
And it all led to one of the most infamous moments in Hollywood history. In May 1938, a group of American film exhibitors publicly declared her box office poison.
It wasn't just a bad review, it was a commercial death sentence.
And the list of names she was on is just incredible. Greta Garbo, Joan Crawford, Katharine Hepburn, genuine titans of the industry.
It just showed how quickly audience perception could turn even the biggest stars into liabilities. It was likely those high-cost, underperforming films and this general feeling that her persona was too cold, too foreign for the average moviegoer.
It's just astonishing. But at this absolute low point in her career, this moment of profound moral clarity happens, and it defines the rest of her life.
While she was working in London, officials from the Nazi Party approached her.
They offered her incredibly lucrative contracts, a grand return to Germany. She would be the country's foremost film star.
And she refused. Absolutely, without hesitation. It was a clear moral choice against the regime rising in her homeland.
And she didn't just turn them down. She took active steps to align with the U.S., applying for American citizenship in 1937.
And right after that refusal, she makes this desperate move to revive her career.
Producer Joe Pasternak offers her a lifeline. But it meant playing completely against type and for a much lower salary than she was used to.
A real sign of how far her star had fallen. She took the part of Frenchie, this bawdy saloon girl in the Western comedy Dusty Rides, again opposite James Stewart.
And that gamble was transformative, shedding that severe Sternberg glamour for this more natural, rowdy character. It instantly revived her career.
The song from that film, See What the Boys in the Back Room Will Have, became a huge hit. It proves she was so much more than just Sternberg's creation.
And speaking of James Stewart, the sources, though they're a bit contested, they suggest a very intense, if brief, relationship during that time.
Right. There's mention of an alleged, though unconfirmed, pregnancy and a subsequent abortion.
If that's true, it just reveals the immense private pressure she was under, trying to maintain her image and restart her career at that exact moment. It underscores that constant tension between the legend and the complicated woman behind it all.
That moral clarity we saw in her refusal of the Nazi offers, that wasn't a one-time thing. It really became the foundation of the second half of her life.
She became this fiercely outspoken anti-fascist. Her political conviction became her identity.
And she wasn't just talking. She was active, financially committed. Along with Billy Wilder and other German exiles in Hollywood, she set up a fund.
A dangerous fund, designed specifically to help Jewish people and political dissidents escape Nazi Germany.
And the financial sacrifice she made is just, it's astonishing. Her entire $450,000 salary from Night Without Armor.
She placed it all into escrow, specifically to aid refugees. That was an immense sum of money, a staggering personal commitment.
Then in 1939, she makes the formal break, becomes an American citizen, formally renounces her German citizenship, so when the U.S. enters the war, she's ready to go.
She immediately uses her fame for the war effort. She was one of the very first public figures to start selling war bonds.
And her contribution was phenomenal. She toured the U.S. from 42 to 43 and sold more war bonds than any other star, directly funding the Allied effort.
But the most heroic part of her patriotism, really, was her 2 extended USO tours between 1944 and 1945.
She performed for Allied troops across North Africa, Italy, the UK, France, often in incredibly dangerous conditions.
The sources confirmed just how dangerous it was. She was often performing just a few kilometers from the German lines.
She actually entered Germany with American forces alongside leaders like General Gavin and General Patton.
When she was asked later why she put herself in so much danger, why she risked capture or death, she gave this very simple, powerful answer in German.
As Ernstens.
Out of decency. It's an act of pure moral commitment that just elevated her from actress to patriotic hero.
It speaks volumes that Billy Wilder, who understood the stakes intimately, later said that Dietrich spent more time on the front lines than Eisenhower.
Her dedication was absolute. And her act for the troops, it wasn't just singing her film songs, it was a whole revue.
Right. It included her classic numbers, but she also played the musical saw.
An unusual skill she'd been taught years earlier in Berlin. It was this blend of high glamour and, well, novelty that captivated the troops.
And then there was the famous mind-reading act that her friend Orson Welles taught her.
Pure morale-boosting comedy.
Yeah.
She'd ask the soldiers to concentrate on a thought, walk through the crowd, stop at some core soldier, and just dramatically say, "Oh, please, think of something else. I can't possibly talk about that."
It was just suggestive enough that some church papers back in the U.S. actually complained about it being a bit scandalous. But the effect on troop morale was undeniable.
And beyond these public tours, she was involved in even more secret work. The sources detail her involvement with the OSS, the Office of Strategic Services.
Specifically their MUSAC project, musical propaganda designed for the German army.
It's a fascinating use of her specific talents. The OSS wanted to use music to demoralize enemy soldiers. Dietrich recorded a number of songs in German for this purpose.
Including the ballad Lily Marlene, which was already popular with soldiers on both sides.
The psychological play was brilliant, having this famous German voice, one associated with sophisticated Weimar culture, sing these morale-sapping songs. It was an insidious message.
And crucially, the sources point out that Dietrich was the only performer who was fully aware that her recordings were for covert OSS operations. She was a willing participant in psychological warfare.
This dedication earned her recognition from the very top. Major General William Donovan, the head of the OSS, personally wrote to her to thank her for her work.
But the end of the war brought this deeply painful personal situation that really tested her moral allegiance.
She reunited with her sister Elizabeth, who had stayed in Germany throughout the war.
And tragically, Elizabeth lived in the village of Belsen, and she ran a cinema there that was, well, it was frequented by the Nazi officers who ran the nearby Bergen-Belsen concentration camp.
Which put Dietrich in an impossible moral and political position.
Initially, the sources say she did vouch for her sister and brother-in-law, trying to shield them from prosecution as collaborators.
A huge risk for Dietrich, whose entire public persona was built on her anti-fascist stance.
But the conflict was just too profound. To reconcile her heroic status with her sister's proximity to one of the most horrific symbols of the Holocaust, it proved impossible.
So Dietrich eventually made this devastating choice to disown her sister completely. For the rest of her life, she claimed to be an only child.
It's a stark reminder of the absolute personal sacrifices her political allegiance demanded. She couldn't allow any connection, no matter how close, to taint the integrity of her stand.
Despite that private tragedy, her public service was officially recognized. She received the Medal of Freedom in November 1947.
Which she often said was her proudest accomplishment.
And the French government honored her as well, eventually awarding her the Commander of the Légion d'honneur, cementing her status as a global symbol of resistance.
After the war, she did continue to make films occasionally. Witness for the Prosecution, Touch of Evil.
But she never really recaptured that pre-war Hollywood stardom. What's fascinating is how she strategically pivoted.
It was a complete reinvention. Starting in the early 1950s, she basically abandoned filmmaking and became a world-touring cabaret artist.
She had mastered one medium, now she was going to conquer another. And this cabaret transformation was immediately sensational.
She debuted in Las Vegas at the Sahara Hotel in 1953 for an astronomical $30,000 a week.
A massive salary for the time. And the key to the publicity was her costume.
We have to talk about the nude dress. Designed by Jean-Louis, it was made of sheer silk soufflé, covered in beads and crystals.
It created this powerful illusion of transparency. It looked like she was wearing nothing underneath.
The sources described the scandal, the rush for tickets in 1953 Las Vegas. It was a calculated move. She knew she needed to court controversy to succeed in this new medium.
And it worked. It generated so much publicity that her next engagements in London and elsewhere were immediately sold out.
But the artistic refinement of her act, that came from a crucial collaboration with the composer Burt Bacharach.
He started working with her in the mid-1950s. And his influence was just, it can't be overstated.
He didn't just play piano. He refined her entire show into this ambitious, theatrical, one-woman performance, which was essential because her voice, a contralto, had a somewhat limited range.
So how did his arrangements work around that limitation?
He used these really sophisticated techniques. He'd slow the tempo of familiar songs, allowing her to lean into the dramatic interpretation rather than her vocal power.
He used intricate orchestral coloring, dramatic instrumental solos. Basically, he framed her voice as a dramatic instrument, not just a melodic one.
Her emotional dependency on him was pretty clear. In a 1971 interview, she said he provided the inspiration she needed to perform night after night.
So when he left her show to focus on his own songwriting career, she was devastated.
She wrote in her memoir that she felt like she'd lost her director, my support, my teacher, my maestro. She said she was forced to work like a robot after he left.
That need to maintain her image, even without him, it fueled this obsessive dedication to stagecraft.
The control extends to the physical realm. Body sculpting undergarments, expert makeup, wigs, and famously, using tape.
The non-surgical facelifts, pulled tight and hidden under her wigs to smooth out wrinkles.
All of that, plus the absolute precision of her stage lighting, which she always directed herself to minimize the effects of aging.
And on stage, she continued to defy gender norms. The first half of the show would be in the iconic Jean-Louis gown.
But for the second half, she'd make a dramatic entrance in a top hat and tails,
which allowed her to sing songs traditionally sung by men, like One for My Baby. It was a powerful statement about androgyny and control, long before that was commonplace.
Yet, despite this global success, that political tension with her homeland never really went away. Her 1960 concert tour of West Germany was difficult.
She faced protests. Large groups of Germans who saw her as a traitor who had abandoned them, chanting, "Marlene, go home."
There were even a couple of credible bomb threats. She was just emotionally and physically drained by the experience.
So much so that she left convinced she would never visit Germany again. But in stark contrast, her tour of Israel around the same time was a huge success.
In Israel, she was a pioneer. She broke this unofficial taboo against using the German language by singing German songs in her concerts.
Her defiance and loyalty were celebrated there. She even started singing a German version of Pete Seeger's anti-war anthem, Where Have All the Flowers Gone?
She was recognized for it, too. She received the Israeli Medallion of Valor in 1965.
But her performing career was nearing its physical end. She was already struggling with health issues.
Cervical cancer, poor circulation. Her career largely ended after a serious fall on stage in Sydney, Australia in 1975. She fractured her thigh bone.
And that injury really marked the end of her public life. After her husband, Rudolf Seeber, died the next year, Dietrich retreated completely.
She moved into her apartment in Paris, 12 Avenue Montaigne, and spent the last 13 years of her life as a recluse, mostly bedridden.
But during this isolation, she maintained her connection to the world through letters and, famously, huge phone bills. She was reportedly in touch with world leaders.
The sources mention frequent calls with Ronald Reagan, Mikhail Gorbachev, Margaret Thatcher. She kept her influence right to the very end.
Even when she agreed to do the documentary Marlene in 1982 with Maximilian Schell, she exercised ultimate control.
She refused to be filmed, absolutely refused. She only allowed him to record her voice,
which forced him to create this collage of archival clips set to her voiceover interviews, a truly unique and defiant way to document the star's life.
To really understand her legend, you have to dissect the persona, which openly defied sexual and gender norms long before the mainstream was ready.
It started early, in 1920s Berlin. She was a regular in the city's thriving gay bars and drag balls and was openly bisexual.
And she pushed boundaries physically, too. She took up boxing at a studio in Berlin that had just started allowing women. This physical androgyny was part of her identity from the beginning.
When she got to Hollywood, she brought that spirit with her. She even coined the phrase sewing circle to describe the underground network of closeted lesbian and bisexual actresses.
The sewing circle is a fascinating piece of hidden Hollywood history. The sources list names like Claudette Colbert, Lily DeMita, and Dolores Del Rio as part of that network.
And as we've touched on, her married life was punctuated by these acknowledged affairs, with co-stars like Gary Cooper, John Gilbert, and later, figures like Yul Brynner.
But maybe the most significant romantic relationship was with the French actor Jean Gabin. Many biographers suggest he was the love of her life.
The relationship lasted through the war, but it ended in 1948. He wouldn't leave France, and she wanted to settle in New York.
She also reportedly had a long affair with Joe Kennedy, the patriarch of the Kennedy family.
But the real tension between the controlled public figure and the complex private woman, that came to light after her death with her daughter's biography in 1992.
Maria Riva's book was relentlessly honest. It was a painful counterpoint to all the glamour. Riva described her mother as a cold, manipulative narcissist.
An ephemeral creature that is beyond normalcy. It's a shocking description. Riva said she wrote the book as a biographer, not a loving daughter, to strip away the myth.
And this presents a real challenge for us, for the audience. How do you reconcile the legend of the selfless patriot with the description of a cold, manipulative figure?
It suggests that the extreme control required to build that icon came at a huge personal cost to those closest to her.
But despite those painful revelations, Maria Riva, who inherited a large part of the estate, managed the sale of her mother's collection to the city of Berlin.
Which in itself is a powerful, complex statement, preserving the legacy of the woman who is such a difficult mother.
And that collection is a testament to her importance. Over 100,000 items. Costumes, photos by masters like Edward Steichen, 300,000 pages of correspondence.
Her influence on fashion is immense. The legendary designer Edith Head said Dietrich knew more about fashion than any other actress.
And that nude dress continues to inspire. In 2017, Swarovski commissioned a modern version with LED lights embedded in it.
Which was inspired by her own letters from 1958, where she wrote about wanting a dress that could actually glow.
It's also worth noting that Maria Riva, the daughter who saw it all, she remained a preserver of her mother's historical importance right up until her death, relatively recently, on October 29, 2025, at the age of 100.
Dietrich herself died on May 6, 1992, in her Paris flat, from kidney failure. She was 90. Her funeral was a powerful political statement, just like her life had been.
A requiem mass at La Madeleine in Paris. Her coffin was draped in the French flag with her 3 military medals at the foot.
The priest said she lived like a soldier and would like to be buried like a soldier.
And though she faced hostility in Germany, her will requested she be buried there. Her body was flown to Berlin.
And for the German burial, her coffin was draped in an American flag, a final statement of her chosen allegiance.
The city of Berlin eventually embraced her. After a big debate, they unveiled Marlene Dietrich Platz in 1997. The plaque honors her dedication to freedom and democracy to Berlin and Germany. She was posthumously made an honorary citizen in 2002.
When you look back at all this material, what's so incredible is just the sheer scope of her journey. From being fired from an orchestra pit
to receiving the Medal of Freedom for her courage on the front lines and then becoming the world's highest paid cabaret star.
She created and maintained this powerful, ambiguous public image for almost 70 years through sheer force of will.
It really is the ultimate case study in persona management. She controlled everything right up until her health made it impossible. And even then, she only allowed her voice to be recorded.
So we'll leave you with this thought to consider. Given how meticulously Marlene Dietrich controlled her public presentation, the look, the politics, the mystery, and given the painful contrast revealed in her daughter's biography, how do we reconcile the cherished legend she built with the complicated, sometimes manipulative woman who created her? How do you view the relationship between the art and the artist?
Thanks for listening.